In this session of the Purple Coffee Podcast, I speak to Jared Easley about building a brand around something your audience craves. Hello and welcome to session 52 of the Purple Coffee Podcast. I am your host, Turn Dog, and on this occasion I speak to Jared Easley of the Starve the Doubts podcast, and he's also one of the main men behind Podcast Movement, a conference for podcasters by podcasters. And to say that I've met some inspiring and impressive individuals through the Podcast Movement community is an understatement. I've met some great friends and it's a fantastic setup, and Jared is one of the main men who set it all up, and he also happens to have a rather fantastic podcast of his own in the Starve the Doubts. He's interviewed plenty of great folk, and he was kind enough to jump on a chat with me to talk about his great mistake, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, is all in aid of my book, The Successful Mistake. And, well, that was basically it. His tale was all about how he tried to do something everyone else was doing, and he tried to fit in certain ideas into a kind of, I don't know, an ecosystem that didn't fit him and his audience. He was trying to be a square peg and forcing it in a round hole. And once he started listening to his audience, and once he started doing things that they really wanted and were, part of, he started to see his podcast grow, and he started to see his entire eyes open in terms of how to do business and how to attract a crowd and such. So it's a very valuable lesson, not just for podcasters, but for anyone trying to build a business, because we ultimately all need to create a product or a service or a collection of these things that are going to connect with our kind of folk. Yes, our customer. It's not about doing it in a way that other people are, but doing it in the way only you can. So we're going to go straight into this session and our amazing talk with Jared. But first I'm going to share a quick bio I wrote in his honour, which hopefully gives you a bit more of an insight into who he is and the little world he's created. So I'm going to do that right now, and then I'll introduce Jared and me chatting shop and such. So here we go. Jared Easley wants you to starve your doubts, but he doesn't sell some diet pill or exercise regime. What, you thought the world needed another slimming formula or diet that cuts out carbs and replaces it with kale? Have you tasted kale? It's freaking gross. No, Jared wants you to overcome your self-doubt and that which holds you back, and instead thrive. Live the life you wish to live and rock it out like only you can. How does he do this? Well, through his podcast, of course, and not any old podcast either, rather one of the most popular ones around. As well as being one of the main dudes behind the Podcast Movement Conference, Jared keeps busy with lots of worthy work. He's a man to follow, and I'm happy to introduce him to you right here, right now. So that's what I'm going to do. Here's Jared and me chatting. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for joining me. I'm delighted to have with me this evening Jared Easley, who is the man behind the Starve the Doubts podcast, and he's also one of the co-founders of the Podcast Movement. And it's something that started out just earlier this summer in 2014, and it was super popular. And I've been lucky enough to connect and interview a few people who went there. They've spoken ever so highly of the Podcast Movement, and it's already pretty much all booked and sold out for next year, and you've got some amazing guests. And Jared has had some incredible people on his podcast, so be sure to check out his world. It's one I can associate very well. Overcoming self-doubt. Jared, I can emphasize with that. As a creative person, that's what we're all about, right?
It is. And, earlier we were joking and we were calling each other the wrong name, but we're good friends because we're doing a podcast together. And yeah, man, this is a lot of fun. And podcasting is just blowing up right now. There was an article in the Washington Post here in the United States today just talking about the opportunity there with podcasting and the iOS 8 updates and General Motors and different car companies that are now putting in the different technology to have podcast in vehicles, and it's just so exciting. I really think we're at the beginning of something that's got major potential, and so good on you, Matthew, to write this book right now. I think this is smart.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited for it, and Jared's right. Being a writer, I should be on top of words, but I struggle. I for some reason saw starve and thought that's the same as Steve, so therefore Jared must be called Steve. It's coming, it's Friday. It's 6 o'clock. The brain's starting to wither and die. I'll blame it on that, but in truth, it's just because I'm, a bit too simple for my own liking. But podcast it's a strange one because it seemed to have a really big resurgence, back probably 5-10 years ago now, and then it seemed to start to shrivel away a bit, not as big. But like you say, in the last year or so, it seems to really be gaining traction again. But a different kind of podcast. People seem to be really embracing the whole collaborative sort of end of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And technology is just getting faster and better.
Yeah.
So podcasting, I don't think it's going away. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and we're in the right place at the right time. And I'm humbled to get the chance to talk with you today.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited, and I'm sure you've got some insane stories and mistakes to share with them. I mean, the people that you've interviewed for Have Doubt is great, and we were just talking a little bit beforehand. You've got a great book talking about how to grow your podcast through collaboration. It's something that I've been working on recently for a guest post. This whole idea of collaborating with your content, not necessarily through book form or through podcast, but rather than just writing a blog post from your own perspective. It's like go out there, interview 10 other entrepreneurs, try and get their thought process, and ultimately that's exactly how I built the Successful Mistake. I was like, I can write a book based on my own thoughts on mistakes, or I can go out there and gather all these insights from other people and try and build something even better, turn good into great.
Matthew, one of the biggest mistakes I've made when I was starting out, especially in podcasting, is I made the mistake, and it's human nature. Everybody who's online wants to get noticed. They want to build a platform. They want to do those things, which are all, normal things. And if you do them correctly, they're good things or healthy things. But I fell into this problem where I wanted to get noticed, and I wanted people to be excited about my podcast, and I wanted all these listeners, and I wanted people to know about the good work that was going on at my podcast. And again, it doesn't sound like that's that bad, but the problem is, and this was really a big mistake, Matthew. For several months, I got utterly disappointed, and there was a lot of failure in my own eyes with the show because it just wasn't resonating. There wasn't a lot of downloads. There wasn't anyone talking about it, and I would look at the analytics, and it was clear. It was like this isn't working, and I realized after a kind message that I received via Facebook from someone who actually took the time and listened to a show and made a nice remark about it. That's when I had the aha moment. Is something you alluded to already. Is the collaboration, and I realized at that moment that if someone could listen to an episode and then basically take a moment out of their day to tell me that was a clue. That was a big clue. Like that made me feel so good. It made me realize, hey, why am I not doing this for my audience? Why am I not noticing people who I want to listen to the show? Because I know when someone notices me, it really makes a big difference. It makes me feel like I'm on the right track. It gives me courage to keep going. And it occurred to me, I'm not collaborating. I'm wanting this show to be about me. I'm not focused on people that I'm trying to serve in the show. And I needed to go through that experience, Matthew, because after that, I realized, okay, in order to do this the right way, obviously I could quit, but I don't want to quit. I need to figure out who is listening, and I need to get to know them. I need to notice them. And so I made up my mind that day. I'm going to make a strategy where my show is going to do its best to try to notice other people in a genuine and authentic way. And I'm going to try to notice the little guy. There's a lot of people that are real successful in business, and I'm just going to pick on one. Some of your listeners will know about a gentleman named Pat Flynn, and Pat Flynn is fantastic, and he just does an awesome job. But Pat Flynn gets thousands of people noticing him every week. He gets hundreds of emails a day. He doesn't necessarily need more people to notice him, although he'll welcome it.
Yeah.
But that said, someone who's starting out, someone who's in the trenches, someone who's working on their business or they're working on their idea, they may not have very many people notice. So when you do take the time to genuinely and sincerely, authentically notice them, they appreciate that. It means a lot to them. So my encouragement to people who are listening to this is don't make the same mistake I made where you try to make whatever your idea or your business is all about you, but focus it completely 100% on who your target audience is. And take that a step further. Go get to know those people. And if you don't know who they are, that's something you have to figure out. You know, who is someone similar who's doing something that excites me. That's a question that I ask most of my guests, Matthew. For anyone who's ever listened to my podcast, if they were to stick around to the end of the show, most of the time I ask a guest, who's doing something that interests you? And they share, hey, I really am interested in Matthew Turner because he's writing this book and he's interviewing all these entrepreneurs. And then I don't know about you, Matthew Turner, so now I'm more likely to go check out what you're up to. But I asked that question, and in asking that question, I kind of figure out, okay, here's some people that are doing something that interests me. Here's some people that are in a similar space that I'm in. Who are the people that are listening to them? Who are the people that are commenting on their blog? Who are the people that are commenting on their Facebook? Who are the people that are tweeting their hashtag or whatever's going on? And start connecting with those people, because when you do that, those are the people that are most likely going to benefit from whatever it is that you're working on with your business or your idea. In my case, I have a podcast. So we started doing that, and immediately results started to happen. It was slow. It took time. It was planting the garden, but I remember I made a list of 5 people, Matthew, and I said, okay, each week I'm going to notice these 5 people, and it's going to be genuine appreciation, whether it's commenting on their blog or sharing something that they're doing on Facebook or Twitter and tagging their name, or it may just be as simple as me liking what they're doing and their social media status and commenting on that, or I could send them a letter, a handwritten letter. I mean, who does that anymore, right? But that's such a powerful thing that you can do, especially when you're small. You can actually write handwritten letters to people, and so I started doing those types of things. And over time, I was able to generate rapport with those people, and then slowly, little bit by little bit, those 5 people started to reciprocate. And so the idea is when you're by yourself, Matthew, most people won't notice you. If you're in a big sea of people and it's just you, nobody's really going to notice you. But if you have an army of people with you, the army gets noticed where you might not get noticed. So the way to build the army is to start small. You notice other people. That creates the rapport. Over time, the rapport generates reciprocity. Again, with the understanding that it's done with authenticity and you're looking out for that person. You want them to win. If it's done sincerely and correctly, these people will want to reciprocate. And when you have enough people, because it starts with 5, but you compound that. What if it's 10? What if it's 20? What if it's 50? What if it's even more? Now you're generously connecting with people and they're wanting to reciprocate. They're saying Matthew Turner, Matthew Turner, Matthew Turner. And other people are going to say, who's this Matthew Turner guy? I keep hearing about him everywhere. And what they don't see is they don't see how many times Matthew Turner turned to those other people in the beginning and hooked them up, how he was gracious to them, how he shared with them, how he shared their content, how he looked out for them, how he mentioned them, things of that nature. Not everyone's going to see that, but they will see the multiple people that are mentioning you, that are saying, hey, this Matthew Turner guy is awesome. And when you've got that going on, that's the army. And it's really hard to not get noticed when you have an army of people with you.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think one of the keys to success is just the entire idea of embracing collaboration. Some people might listen to this and think, well, yeah, that's all fine if you're creating a blog or a podcast or a video channel on YouTube or something. You can look to be getting guests on. That's what they consider collaboration. But for me, it's so much bigger than that. No matter what business you have, you can look at it and think, right, whatever I'm going to do, how can I collaborate with other businesses, other entrepreneurs, my customers, people who aren't my customers yet but maybe my customers tomorrow. How can I involve them? How can you, like you say, send out that handwritten letter? How can you just do something that makes a difference? And whenever possible, if you can get them involved in the process, be it through something like crowdfunding, through it be just asking for their opinions, their feedback, their testimonials, once people feel connected with something, then half the battle is won.
I think there's some powerful takeaways if your listeners and your readers embrace this idea of collaborating and noticing other people. That is going to take them farther and faster.
No, I totally agree with that. And I love how we've gone straight into the mistake. It just integrated. It just went so easily. It's fantastic. And it is, I can imagine I'm where you were once upon a time. You know, you have a podcast, you've kind of got a bit of an idea of what you want from it. The downloads aren't too great. So you don't quite know what to do. And I love how you ultimately listen to your audience. You had one or two people connect with you, say this is the kind of thing I like. So it's like, well, if they like this, then maybe I should be looking to do more of that, and take it from there.
Well said.
So you obviously went through that process. You went through. You were trying to create a podcast more around you, and you got to a bit of a pivot where you felt, right, I need to now make it about other people. So tell us a little bit more about the process of you choosing these five individuals. What went through your mind when you thought, right, I want to now collaborate? Did you go through this thinking, I want these as my guests and I need to now start small? Or did you just want to, open your eyes and try and speak to other people in different sort of areas?
Uh, Great question. At the time, I just had guests that I thought were interesting on my show. And then it was about, okay, who are people that listen to similar podcasts that might find this information helpful and useful? And that's how I started. And it was basically who's raised their hand, who's favorited a tweet, who's who's actually taken a moment to email me and say that they liked something. And in the beginning it was hard to come up with five people. I had to get a little creative and I had to figure that out. But once I figured that out, then it was okay, how do I notice these people, how do I befriend them? And I don't like the word followers, Matthew, and there'll be some differences in opinion on this, but I there's so many things out there now, buzzwords like building the platform and tribes and followers, and I more subscribe to the idea of treat people like your friends. And I know when you have a massive audience, that's not always realistic, but when you're small and you're starting out, you can treat people like a friend. And it's so big right now to grow your email list, and I totally get that because that really is a powerful way to sell items. And but just this idea of being a number, I really struggle with that. And my encouragement to fellow entrepreneurs, especially ones that are starting out, is really be careful with that. Instead of seeking more followers, try to build those friendships, because those friendships are the ones that are going to want to support you when you do that product launch or when you have that item coming up or that book. You need your friends, and so focus on building friendships rather than more followers.
Oh, that's interesting because it sounds like before you reached this moment, you were very focused on certain metrics. It's like, oh, I'm not getting enough subscribers, I'm not getting enough downloads, and these are the metrics that can taint us so easily, But they're easy to measure, aren't they? You start off with week one, you've got 5 subscribers, and you get 100 downloads, and then right, week two, I've got now 10 subscribers, and I get 200 subscribers. You can measure that kind of metric quite easily. We can get tainted by that. But it sounds like once you reached that tipping point, you thought, the hell with these kind of metrics. I'm not focusing on the numbers of followers. I want to build these connections more than anything else.
There are lots of cool ways to monitor and measure that stuff. One site that's been very helpful to me is Mention. I believe it's mention.com.
Yeah.
And that's a cool site if your listeners haven't checked that out or your readers haven't checked that out. That's just a great way to see who's talking about you on social media. It interprets shortened links like bit.ly links. It can interpret pretty links, so it knows if people are pointing to your website. So I'd say mention.com is a very cool site. You can go sign up and put an alert for your name or for the name of your business, the name of your podcast, the name of whatever you're working on. And then it's going to give you a little report in your inbox that tells you, hey, these people are mentioning you. And that's a good clue right there. Okay, these are people I need to engage with.
Yeah, that's a very good point because, they're the people who are actually taking an active interest. So it's like they're not just a number, they're not just an email subscriber, then they're, this actual human being with an actual name, and you're able to reach out to them and be like, hey, thank you for being an awesome supporter. You know, anytime that I can help you, just let me know.
Yeah, there you go.
Fantastic. So It sounds like you it changed your entire sort of idea of how to ultimately grow your business and grow your podcast, because you went from settling on these metrics, you wanted to build these connections. Was that when you started trying to bring more interviews and focus on the self-doubt side of things?
Well, for me, I realized there's a lot of people doing interview type podcasts, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing, but in order to differentiate yourself, you got to have a real specific niche, or you got to just try something different. And what really started to work for me was when I started doing co-hosted podcasts, meaning I'd have a guest co-host.
Uh-huh.
And when I started doing that, that's when I started to really notice some major, significant changes, like improvements, more listeners, more interest. But before that, it was just me and one guest. So I would just interview one guest. But when I brought a third person in, now it changed the dynamic of the conversation. It just added a lot. And I don't necessarily think there was a ton lacking. Maybe there was, but just having that third person really helped. So, well, yeah, and it featured, I basically featured a new guest, but I'd also feature a new guest co host every episode. And doing that consistently, there was more people that were sharing the episode. The guests liked it because more people, not, it wasn't just me sharing the episode on social media, it was the co host doing it as well. And then the co host liked it because I would strategically pick people that were new to podcasting or didn't have a podcast. So it was a chance for them to have a conversation with an expert or an influential person that they might not have been able to talk to otherwise, other than being a guest co-host on the show. So I started doing that on a regular basis, and that really helped to grow a lot of connections and really develop a lot of those friendships that we were talking about, because people liked me, they trusted me, they appreciated the fact that I brought them on the show. And yeah, I started doing that, and that really made a big difference. Because before I was just kind of lost in the shuffle.
Wow. And I mean, I love that approach, because it just plays on the whole idea of collaboration again. You're not just getting guests, but it's like, I want to invite you not just to be a guest on my show, but I want you to be a co-host with me. I want you to share in this. And that must be a fantastic thing for your listeners too, because they're seeing that, oh, he is, Jared, he's not just all about me. He wants to share this love. He wants to bring other people involved, not just in a guest format, but in a co-host format too.
Yeah, I got a lot of emails of people thanking me that didn't even, weren't even on the show, but just thanking me for doing it, and made comments, not to bash any other podcasters, but like, I listen to this podcast and this other podcast, and they would never do this. They would never bring on a guest co-host, especially someone that's not well known. They would never do it. And thank you for being willing to do that. And I thought, wow, that's I think here's a powerful thing that I want to share with you, Matthew, and share with your readers is anytime in your business that, or your blog or your podcast or whatever you're working on, anytime you can create something that has the target person in mind and has them saying me too. When someone can say me too, that's when you know it's going to connect. That's when you know it's powerful. So what happened here, whether it was intended or not, is by having a guest co-host that wasn't well known, that wasn't an A-lister, and giving them that opportunity. There were a lot of listeners out there that listened to that and said, man, I get that. That's cool. And it wasn't disrespectful to any other podcast out there, but it was just an appreciation. It was something that people said, I get it. This guy's helping other people. And that was just a big aha for me is try to make what you do something so compelling that people say, me too, I get it. And if you can get them to say that is a powerful way to build that rapport and that reciprocity.
Oh, I totally agree. And it reminds me a little bit when I was speaking to Srinivas Rao about when he kind of changed his mindset of going, trying to get the big guest, the guest which would, people go, oh, wow, that's cool because that individual's a really big entrepreneur. And he started just focusing on, I want to bring people on the show who just inspire me, people who I feel like I could build a rapport with. And he didn't care whether they had 100,000 followers or they had 5 followers. If it inspired him, that was an individual he wanted on the show to speak to. And I think that's a very powerful message to get across, because you think, right, I'm taking away these metrics. I'm not bothered about who the individual is, on the outside looking in. I care about who the individual is I want to actually unearth this person. I want to give him a platform to reach out, but I want to, actually build a rapport with him because I feel that they're on the same alignment as myself.
Oh man, yeah. I hope your readers and listeners are paying attention to this portion because I think this is really valuable stuff. So
Yeah, well, I love it, and again, we're kind of focusing on the idea of sort of podcast, but a business can do this. Say you're owning a shop, you've got a clothes shop, and
hmm
it's as an owner of a clothes shop, you don't just have to be trying to bring in the big brand names. You could be like, right, every month I'm going to bring in an unknown local designer. I want to, collaborate with these people. I want to use my shop as a platform for these up and coming people to, use their skill set. Because that's going to get all the other young designers out there and hopeful designers one day, falling in love with your shop because you're not just about the big person. You're not just about these big brands. You're trying to bring in other folk. And you could use that in just about every industry, use your business as a platform for people who aren't quite there yet to showcase their skills, showcase what they're worth, and give them a platform to, say, hey, look at me. I want to be here too.
yeah, it's so easy to not do that. It's so easy to just cater to you know the the A-list crowd or whatever. But I think for people that don't allow that to only be their focus, I think they set themselves up with a greater opportunity to be making an impact and win.
I definitely think so because collaboration. I'm such a keen collaborator and I love it. And whenever I kind of come up with a new idea or project, one of the first things I think about is like how, can I collaborate this idea. It's not just necessarily about who you're going to involve, but how can I involve other people in different kind of ways? Maybe I'm not able to interview someone for this particular project, but can I get their input elsewhere? Can I involve readers in the process? There's so many different forms of collaboration, and I love how you sort of use that Me Too moment. If you can get your audience thinking Me Too, man, you've pretty much cracked it. And I think whatever
Well,
industry in you can reach that moment.
I learned that from a friend who's a writer. He does posts for Huffington Post and for Entrepreneur Magazine and a couple other places. But he's the one that shared that with me. He's like, the articles that seem to do the best are the ones where someone reads it and they say "Me too." And man, ever since I've heard that, I'm like, what can I do that makes people say "Me too"? And I think that's a really good and easy way to start doing something that has an impact.
Oh, I totally agree. I absolutely love it. And to get to that, you first need to really understand your audience. You need to kind of define who they are,
Yeah.
get an understanding, and it comes back to that pivotal moment for you where you moved away from the me mentality. I want to build a podcast that gets loads of downloads, etc., to I want to actually build a podcast that people are going to enjoy, and I want to form connections with them. And in doing so, you learn about your audience. You were able to make friendships with them, and you were able to build content and build features that were going to connect with them.
Matthew, I had a guest on my podcast. Her name is Shanae Howard, and Shanae did something really interesting when she was first starting her business. She did a thing called the 100 person project or 100 people project. I don't remember the exact title, but the idea was she wanted to start a business. She was struggling, so she went and interviewed, similar. She's doing Matthew Turner style here. She interviewed 100 people, and in those conversations with 100 people, she figured out what their pains were, what their struggles were, what got to know them, and then based off that, she had dozens of business ideas, and now she's starting to implement little bit by little bit, and she's having a lot of success with her business now. But it started with her really getting to know key people that could help her it was just a connection. It was a relationship, but through that relationship, that helped her to see what was next. So that would be my encouragement, also to your listeners and to your readers, is if you're not sure what to do with your business, go talk to 100 people. Go actually physically talk to them, whether it's a phone call, whether it's Skype, whether it's in person, whatever it is. Even if it's just a 10-minute thing, start talking to them, and yeah,
Oh,
that's going to help you get insight, valuable insight on what
that
to do next.
that is powerful, and it is just a switch in mindset because ultimately, in its purest form, that is just market research. So no matter what business you kind of come in, that is basically market research, but it's market research with this emotional spin on it. It's like, I'm not going to just try and gather all this data and the metrics, and I'm not going to just send out some, meaningless questionnaire and, buy this report and read, etc., etc. I'm going to actually sort of target, 50, 100, 200 people and try and, form friendships, form relationships and connections with them. And it's just an emotional take on market research, and I absolutely love that because you're going to learn so much during that. But it's time consuming, sure, but wow, the powerful messages and the stories that you're going to hear from that, you'll be able to build some really amazing things.
Yep.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, just to kind of sum up where you are today, obviously you've got a successful podcast now. You've been branching out. You've been bringing people together with the podcast movement, which I feel now people have heard your story and the whole, emphasis on collaboration. Podcast movement just makes sense because it is a collaborative conference that is bringing people together and encouraging people to just kind of get involved with one another. So things are kind of going well for you now, and you get guests, and you get lots of emails from people wanting to be guests and be co-hosts and all these kind of things. So how has it changed your entire emphasis on how you're growing and where you're moving from here to where you want to be in 5-10 years time?
Well, it's definitely encouraged me. It's made me realize, hey, with collaboration, if you do collaboration correctly, it's going to increase the likelihood of success, increase the likelihood of greater visibility, because you have more people that are working on it. So, podcast movement was an idea. We didn't know how to do a lot of things, but we got advice. And then just a critical thing that I would encourage, again, your listeners and your readers to consider is, how do I validate my idea in the market? And one of the best ways to do that for us, and you're going to actually try this too, Matthew, is the Kickstarter, the crowdfunding campaign. We launched a campaign and we said if we couldn't raise a certain amount of money, we had no business pursuing this idea. It wasn't going to make any sense because we were going to invest lots of time and energy and resources and finances into something that was going to fail. So Kickstarter, we put it out there. We did not have an email list, and some people say you got to have an email list to be successful with a campaign, but that wasn't true for us. We didn't have an email list, but we did have connections with fellow podcasters. We reached out to them in a collaborative effort. We asked them if they'd be willing to support the conference, if they'd speak at it, if they would share it with their network. And within 9 hours' time of launching the Kickstarter campaign, we had our minimum goal, and it was $11,000 US. And then you fast forward 30 days, we had over $30,000 US. And we were really excited about that because we had no experience with this. We had never done a Kickstarter campaign. We had never done an event. We even researched events on Kickstarter, and most events on Kickstarter were not successfully funded. So I feel like it was just such a huge win and such a testimony of the podcast community. But yeah, my advice and encouragement to your listeners and readers is market before you manufacture. Go validate your idea. Have people actually pay you for the idea before you go and build something, because you don't want to spend all this time and energy and focus on building something that no one's going to care about.
Absolutely. And again, if you collaborate, that process is so much easier because you're not basically cold calling people. You're not just sending out these heartless messages. You're saying, well, I've already built a connection with you. Is this the kind of thing you want? Is this the kind of thing you pay for? And the more relationships that you form and the deeper connections you form with your audience, whoever it is, then they're going to give you their honest input of like, yes, like that is worth your while. You should be working on that course or product or service, or no, that's not going to help us. So you should work on something else instead.
Yep.
Fantastic. So to just kind of sum things up, because we've covered lots and lots and lots, and my main theme is all this. Once upon a time you didn't collaborate and you tried to do everything on your own, and then you started to collaborate and good things began to happen. So if you could just help one or two people, give one or two pieces of actionable advice that someone, and I'm talking anyone here, not someone looking to get into a blog or a podcast, but someone who has a business and they feel like, okay, I could involve other people, I could collaborate more. But what one or two pieces of actionable advice would you give to help them today go, yes, I'm going from my own mentality mindset to bring other people into this thing?
Yeah, to sum up what we've talked about, notice your target market. find unique ways to notice them, be human. Don't treat them like a number, treat them like a friend. And then the second thing is definitely find unique ways to collaborate with other people because it increases the likelihood of success and visibility. Use the strategies that we talked about. You know, how can you create or how can you market to your target audience in a way that makes them say me too? I think that's so powerful. If you can notice other people, if you can make them feel like they're a part of it by saying they're saying me too in your marketing efforts, and you're working actively finding unique ways to collaborate with your target customer or within people within your niche, I think that is a great recipe to make big things happen.
I love that, and like I'll read it again. I love this whole idea of the Me Too mentality. If you can kind of have that as the little sign above whatever you do, that's a good way to go. Because if you can get people really truly emphasizing with your point and your message, then that battle has been won because they're on board with you. They'll want to help you out.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I've absolutely loved this talk, Jared. It's been such an insightful story, and yeah, it's a journey I feel so many people can emphasize with, whether they're into podcasts or it's a brick and mortar store, it's an online business. You start out more often than not on your own or with just a couple of founders, and you try and build something off your own back, and you try and get your ideas out there. And whether you mean for it to be egotistical or not, it quite often gets that way. But the moment you start thinking about how can I involve other people, how can I collaborate with other individuals, other businesses, other brands, and how can I make my audience feel involved, so I'm actually befriending them, I'm actually listening to them, I'm not just sort of shoving these messages down their throats, good things will happen. I think that is cross any kind of industry and any kind of business or idea. And that is the power of collaboration right there.
Well said.
Okay, absolutely love it. And viewer or listener, thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you. So yeah, Jared, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. And worst case scenario, if you ever want to say hello, just send me an email and say hi, Steve.
Yes, I encourage everybody to call him Steve. From what he says, that's what his friends call him anyway. So I just kind of fast forward for it all. Got into like best friend status straight away. It's cool.
All good. All right. Best wishes to you and your business and your book, Matthew.
Thank you ever so much. Cheers.
All right. Have a good day.
And there you go, ladies and gents. Thank you ever so much for joining me on this session of the Purple Coffee Podcast. And a big thanks to Jared too for not only being part of this podcast, but the Success and Mistake as well. It's something I've taken a great deal from, not just Jared's tale, but the other 162 folk I've interviewed along the way. But Jared's, man, it was an amazing one. It really touched me, and I hope it touched you too. We come into business, we start a product or we start a new project with an idea of what we think is going to be right. Maybe we're following the rule book. We've read a couple of books and they've said do this, do that, and we've got a good idea of what we want. But until you actually start touching your audience in a meaningful way, what the hell are you doing and what are we doing as a collective? Whereas Jared took it a different way, and I think he managed to build something on his own 2 feet that worked, that connected him with his audience, and he's grown and grown and grown as an individual. The podcast has grown as well, a product, as a vessel, and it's led to bigger and better things like the podcast movement, which is just absolutely rocking it, and year on year is becoming more and more popular, getting some great guests. So it just goes to show, once you hone in on what your audience wants and you let them feed you with that information, good things can happen. So I hope you'll check out Jared and his world. He's a great guy to follow. I've put all the show notes as well as his links over at tdog.co/purplecoffee52. That's tdog.co/purplecoffee52. So yeah, you should definitely check that out. And while there, please consider leaving a quick rating and review on iTunes and subscribing and such. It certainly helps a podcaster like moi. But that's pretty much it. Thank you ever so much for joining me. Have a fantastic end to your day, and make sure you take Jared's words on board and put them into practice. That's what it's all about. There's no point in listening and doing nothing. Take action, my good friend. I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.